Let's go straight to my next guest and talk about, the recognition by all of the lovely progressive leaders around the world of a Palestinian state. There's been announced over the weekend and yesterday, ranging from Britain to France, Belgium. I'm sure everyone really cares what Belgium thinks about everything. Let's talk about this with Andrew Fawkes. He's a defence, Middle East and disinformation expert and a research fellow at the Henry Jackson Society and joins us right now. A very good morning to you, Andrew.
Hi, Julia.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us. I suppose I just want to ask, first of all, your initial reaction to that announcement from Keir Starmer. We've had it from Mark Carney in Canada and other nations, Macron in France. And what do you make of the decision to recognise a Palestinian state and the sight of that Palestinian flag going up at what is now the Palestinian embassy in London?
Well, it's the wrong time. It's the wrong move. It takes us further from peace. It probably kills the hostages. And backs the Israelis into a corner where we're probably going to see them taking steps to make sure this doesn't become a permanent thing. So all in all, I would suggest it's a fairly disastrous move. That
would be a fair summary of a disastrous move. You said very casually there, we'll probably kill the hostages. We've got 48 hostages, 20 of whom believed to be alive, barely alive. We've seen the state of some of them, emaciated, deliberately starved, beaten and tortured, held in terrible conditions. Why do you think this will kill the hostages?
Well, it's removed any incentive for either side to find any sort of ceasefire compromise. Hamas have been given a victory beyond their wildest dreams, no matter what Mr. Starmer says. Hamas is polling at 70–80% across the Palestinian areas, the West Bank and Gaza. If there's an election tomorrow, Hamas get power in a landslide.
Hold on a minute. Keir Starmer has said, and Mark Carney and Macron, they've all said Hamas cannot play a role in any future government of the Palestinian state. So that's dealt with. Come on, Andrew, get with the programme.
Incredibly colonialist way of approaching things. Yeah. Who are they to tell the Palestinians who to vote for? When it certainly seems that more than 2 in every 3 of them want to vote for Hamas right now. And that will only go up, I suspect, as we see the fruits of 7th of October, the massacre, rape and torture of Jews being rewarded on the international stage. So Hamas have absolutely no reason to agree to a ceasefire. They're getting everything they want without having to make a single concession.
No, indeed.
Then, on the other side, Israel is now backed into a corner.
Why do you say that? What's changed for them?
Because Israel's essentially entirely reliant now on Washington for their international security. There is one seat on the UN Security Council that will veto any proposals against them, and that is the United States. However, polling amongst Democrat voters in the United States, support for Israel is now 6%. Which means Israel is now one presidential election away from having the entirety of the UN Security Council lined up against them. And so they have a 3-year window now to make whatever moves they need to make sure the state of Israel's security and future is prioritised. And that means having to destroy as much of Hamas as they can, which unfortunately precludes a ceasefire, which means the hostages are at significant risk.
Yeah, and we know going into Gaza City is largely where they think the hostages are being held in tunnels, booby-trapped with explosive devices, if any chance of a rescue comes close. Now, I know you've been in Israel a lot, and I know you've been in Gaza as well. You travelled out with the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation and food sort of deliveries, I think, twice. And you've seen also, you've had access, more than vast majority of people, to the full footage of the absolute horrors of what happened on October the 7th. And I've heard you talk about that in very emotional terms. Israel is being painted as the baddie in this situation. Whenever I talk about them, and you, and I see what you write online, we're just shills for Israel. I mean, we're obviously being paid by them. I'm just waiting for my £1 million check every week to say what I say, obviously. I mean, this is nonsense that people say. But how is it that Israel has managed to be painted as the baddie in this situation when they, on October the 7th, were quite clearly the victims? And you've written extensively on the evidence that we do have, largely from the Hamas run health ministry in Gaza, that the rate of the ratio of combatant and non-combatant deaths is in terms of civilian deaths is the lowest of pretty much any war ever fought in human history. How is it that Israel has been managed to be painted as the wrongdoers in this scenario when they were the victims of a horrific massacre?
Well, there's two factors to this. First of all, Israel hasn't managed the information war particularly well. And secondly, Hamas have managed it incredibly well, mainly because they have billions in state sponsorship from a number of malign actors around the world who have thrown their... So we're looking at Iran, Pakistan, Qatar, Russia. They've thrown their bot armies online to boost and amplify Hamas's messaging. And then, of course, we have Al Jazeera, who have multiple air quotes journalists on the ground in Gaza who are happy to repeat pretty much everything Hamas want them to say. The Israeli mismanagement, I don't think they've really shown the world October the 7th. I speak to so many people who just don't understand how horrendous it was. And the details are so bad I couldn't even tell you now because it would get you in trouble with regulators. That's how graphically horrific what Hamas did.
And you've been in war. You fought yourself. You know what war looks like.
Oh, nothing I saw in Afghanistan on 3 tours comes remotely close to what Hamas did on 7th of October. It is.
Do you think people in the West
belief.
don't get it? Partly there's the thing in the West, people don't understand the full horror of what actually happened, whereas of course people in Israel really do. And having just come back from there, I don't think people understand also just how four square Israelis, they may not support Benjamin Netanyahu or any particular military activity, but they are so four square behind the urge to get the hostages home and to make their country safe. And they understand it in a visceral way in which we, living in the much safer West, really don't get the imminent threat that Israel lives under from Hamas, and yes, also, frankly, from Fatah and the Palestinian Authority as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of people don't understand that the gentleman that Keir Starmer was shaking hands with just a week or so ago, Abu Mazen or Mahmoud Abbas, depending on which name you want to use, has a PhD in Holocaust denial. His government pays Palestinian prisoners in jail. He pays their families if they have murdered Israelis or Jews.
Yeah. And the families get a pension if their member of the family dies.
Exactly so. It's called pay for slay, and people can Google that if they want more detail.
But hold on a minute. Keir Starmer has said he's demanded no less, that the Palestinian Authority, run by Mahmoud Abbas, stops paying terrorists for killing Israelis. So that's he's dealt with that.
Well, what they've done is they've just restructured it. So it still continues, but it's under a different name and a different payment mechanism, but they're still doing it. And the idea that these are a fair or legitimate partner for peace is a joke. They are one step below Hamas in terms of anti-Semitic, terrorist enabling horrors. And that is who Mr. Starmer has shaken hands with. This is the ambassador for who Labour MPs were taking selfies with yesterday.
Oh, yes.
It is a moral stain on the United Kingdom that we have gotten into bed with these people.
What would you do if you were Keir Starmer? What would you be, doing in terms of Palestinian statehood, in terms of support for Israel or not? What would you be doing?
I'd back the hell out of the Middle East, quite frankly. It's not our business. It's been a very long time since the UK has been a country that can just draw lines on a map and declare countries
Shouldn't we be backing our only democratic ally in the Middle East?
Well, of course, but in terms of the solution, this is a Middle Eastern problem and it needs a Middle Eastern solution. We should say to Israel, you have our support. We want you to destroy this terror group. We also want peace for Palestinians in future, but we're not going to force you or try and dictate to you how you get there.
Okay. And if you were Benjamin Netanyahu, if you were the Israeli Prime Minister, what would you be doing to keep your nation safe? Which is the first job of a Prime Minister, surely.
Yeah, well, and again, I'm reticent to answer the question because, I'm a British analyst and really this is Israeli business. Personally, I would see an isolation of the Palestinian areas. I think there is such a security threat that comes from them. Just the other day, we had shootings and bombings in Jerusalem. Shootings at the Allenby Bridge coming into Israel from Jordan. This is a security threat. You need to deal with that. And then I would be fragmenting the Palestinians. I would be finding those who I can work with. I'll be making sure they get money to work with us. They would start trading with us. And then hopefully people would see the benefits of making peace with Israel. But that can only be done incrementally and, a very, very long process over years to show people the advantages of peace and coexistence.
Well, as countries like Jordan, Egypt and others have seen, and again, the large percentage of Arab Israelis who also live in peace and in Israel. Fascinating to talk to you. How do you think this is all going to end? I mean, Donald Trump's going to make a speech at the UN a little bit later today. What do you think he's going to say?
I think Trump will skirt it. I think he's very keen to be a peacemaker. He's been very keen to let the Israelis get on with stuff. He's backed away from all the interference Biden had over the last 2 years.
Yep.
I think the key decision point on how this ends will be what Israel does next. They are backed into this diplomatic corner. Do they double down or do they fold? And that's going to be really interesting. And we might see those steps towards annexation in the West Bank to make a Palestinian state impossible in future.
Yeah. Or they could agree to a Palestinian state and offer land, and as they've done it's been offered 4 different times, and Palestinian authorities and representatives will say no, and then Israel can be blamed yet again, which is basically what happens that's the reality, that's the history. Andrew Fox, always so good to get your perspective.